Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I'm Anissa Taron, your host, along with my beautiful co host, Jamila. And then we have Gary Marcus Judge with us today. And I think you're back in Italy right now,
Yeah, I'm back in Italy.
if
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah, I'm
mistaken.
here.
Yes, and
Yeah.
he's just come back from a beautiful trip. I say Tanzania. The Tanzanians, if I want to call it that, says Tanzania. So we all have a different way of saying it. Today's conversation is really to talk about personal growth through challenges. And Gary has navigated some complexities around living abroad, learning new languages, and embracing cultural differences. So I think it's pretty apt that he's just come back from a trip where he'll maybe share with us those cultural differences as well. And then all while growing a successful business from the ground up. And then I'll read a little bit about his bio and then we'll hand over to Jamila to say hi to everyone. Gary's written an autobiography, Free to Fly, lives in a foreign country, learning the culture, language, and marrying an Italian woman were all part of his journey. He became a qualified business coach to help clients reach their business objectives using English as a means to communicate. He now offers his services free of charge to young entrepreneurs who need a wise head. Welcome, Gary, and welcome, Jamila.
Thank you,
Thank
Anissa.
you for the invite.
Yeah, it's our pleasure, Gary. We're looking forward to hearing more about your story and your life's journey and how it's impacted on those around you. And for purposes, again, of introduction, I'm Jamila, and thank you, Anissa, um, for that great welcome. For everyone who's here today, we wish you a good morning or a good afternoon and maybe a good evening as well. And
Mhm.
for those who cannot make this session, I know a few people have just sent me messages to say that they will be watching the recording. So we welcome you as well to that. And Gary, I hand over to you now. We're really looking forward to hearing your story. So welcome to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Anissa. Thank you, Jamila. I'm Gary Marcus Judge. I'm originally from the UK. I was born in the UK and I now live in Italy. I work as an executive coach, a business coach. I have run my own business, my own language school for 25 years. Got married to an Italian woman, as Anissa mentioned before. I say that is important because we didn't speak the same language. So she was speaking Italian and I was speaking English. So you can imagine our communication at the beginning was very difficult. Three beautiful children came along and they've grown up now. Two in the UK, one's here. The last one's here in Italy with us. And yeah, life hasn't been an easy ride. And so when Anissa said about the words that are emblematic of her podcast was grudge, grit, grace, and
Great.
gratitude. Yeah, grace and gratitude, right? Those are the
Yes,
four
that's
words.
right.
And those words actually just sort of hit home because I said, well, that's how I've been living my life basically from the beginning, where grudge was it was just grudge. It wasn't the rest of the gratitude and grace came along later, but there was a lot of grudge because I always felt there was injustice, like I'd been unfairly treated, and you carry that grudge like a big boulder on my shoulder through life, and it sort of held me back, and I didn't know it at the time. But now I look back, having worked on myself, I see those are big moments in my life where things shifted to get to where I am today, a very grateful person.
Gary, but when did you get that insight around when you were in this grudge, resentful state? When did you get the revelation that you needed to shift out of the grudge state? And what was the catalyst or the event or the circumstance?
And Gary, I
I
think
think
just
around,
keeping in
yeah.
mind also before you answer, is this something that, like, do we find ourselves in that grudge state when in our younger years, we're just starting off, we've come off from school and university and all the rest of it, and you feel like it's the whole world against you? Or do you find that this moves to different phases of your life and experiences that you may have?
Yeah, I think the word, Jamila, yeah, and let me answer that question. It was like grudge was more the unfair. And I think I always went through life thinking I'd been unfairly treated. If you look at my autobiography, where I wrote a few things in my autobiography, that was like a confession, a liberation, and I called it Free to Fly. Because again, that little book I'd written, it was a message to my children saying that Gary existed before he became a dad. Before he came to Italy, Gary as a person had a past. And so the idea was just to share that with them. But then the person who helped me write the book said, well, it's a shame because it's an interesting story. Perhaps you need to get that out there. And it's not a bestseller, absolutely not. But it was something that triggered me to actually go deeper into myself and accept. So maybe it was like around about 2018, 19, where I started actually working on myself. Before I'd hidden this grudge and this difficulty and this unfairness, I'd hidden that inside of me. And it only came out in moments where I thought everything was against me and I didn't have the right tools. I didn't have the background. I didn't have the education. I didn't have the family stability. And so it was all, how can I do any more? Because look at my background. So I always had a reason to not do any more because I always had something, look back, look at me, I mean, of course, you've got more for yourself because you had a stable background or you had a good education. So there was always this grudge inside of me. And when I started working on that around about not long ago, I mean, we're talking about 6-7 years ago, that things really started changing.
Gary, I was doing a talk last night to a group of very powerful alpha females. Well, yeah, there were men in the audience as well. And the talk was really also around how do we embrace our inner villain? Because if for most parts of our lives, we have almost judged ourselves and felt guilty because of our shadow side that we were living in this grudge state. Not all of it is really that bad. Some of those experiences is very much what shaped us. So what I'd like to ask you is, what of these experiences was the most pivotal ones that have shaped you, that also was allowing you to get out of the grudge state?
Yeah, I think the grudge was, it was always something that I felt towards my father mainly because he was a very disciplinarian, very strict, very aggressive. We lived that kind of background. And so I always felt like I didn't want to be like that. That's not the way I want to approach the world, but that's the way I was brought up. That's the way that was the environment we lived in. So when we talk about nurture and nature, some of it was inside of me, but the environment I lived in just didn't allow the space for me to express the emotions and the values I had inside of me. And so I look at some of this grudge and I think, okay, what did my dad give me really? Because there were I always gave him the blame. I always said it was him. I was always held back. I didn't have the right tools, environment, etc. But when I look back at it, he gave me the strength. He gave me that non-victim, like, don't be a victim. No one's going to help you. Just get up and do it. You're going to have to do that. So he gave me also the impetus to be a risk taker. I'm a risk taker. That's why I'm an entrepreneur, because I take risks. I'm very disciplined. I believe in myself. I'm confident. These are the things my dad gave me. He gave me a lot of bad things, but these are the good things. So when I look at grudge, that's what the positives I can take away from the grudge, let's say.
Yes. And we don't see it immediately, the gifts and opportunities, but we do realize that they were part and parcel, the enablers to our personal development and growth and transformation. Over to you, Jamila. What have you got
Yeah.
burning to ask
I
Gary?
think, Anissa, just listening to that, it reminds me of one of our previous podcasts that we had with Dr. Candice. And she mentioned about the different archetypes that we take on, and especially from our childhood. And remember, we mentioned the archetype of the gambler, the risk taker. And so there are a lot of positives. We may see mostly negatives, but it's so important for us to also look at the positives that come out of it. Like you say, it's given you that impetus, it's given you I think for me, I think what I got out of it from my dad or my own experience is that nothing's impossible. And that if you put your mind to it, you can, as much as you feel like, oh, you know what, I've been, the world is against me, I've been done down by the universe or by society, and I haven't been given all of the benefits or privileges that others have. So you kind of starting off on a back foot, but at the same time, you have this drive within you that makes you feel like, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to make sure that this isn't my life. It's not going to be a repetition of my childhood or how I grew up, or who you didn't want to be seen as. So I think that's very interesting, and also very empowering and admirable, because those are absolutely amazing qualities in a person, and I find with a lot of entrepreneurs, and Anissa, you've got a lot of experience with dealing with entrepreneurs, but they are brave and they've got grit. And I sometimes I feel like this when I was, coming out of my divorce. At that point, I had this resolve within me that I was going to make a point, and I was going to prove everybody wrong, and I was going to be successful. And in as much as that's something that can possibly be a downfall, but it's also something that you can look at that drives you and pushes you forward so that you can shift out of that grudge state. Just wanted to hear, because Anissa, you have a little bit of history with Gary. Can you just tell us a little bit more about your background, and again about that shift and how you moved into the space that you are today? Because a lot of us don't get that privilege of awareness and realization and consciousness where we get to that point of working on ourselves and making that shift. So if you can just share a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I was just reflecting while you were talking, Jamila, about an event I went to. It was an all-day seminar on forgiveness, and I remember going there. Before going there, I was just thinking to myself, all the people who have to forgive me. I have to forgive them, or they have to forgive me. I was trying to understand how this was working out, because I was the one who'd been unfairly treated. I was the one who'd spent 10 years in another country as a child, born in one country, taken to another child, 5 years in an orphanage, and all sorts of things. So I had a lot of emotions going into this seminar, thinking, I don't know if I can forgive people. I don't know. Who am I? And I had these figures in my head, my dad, and this, and my mom, and this, all these people, and I had to forgive them. And I was thinking, can I do that? And we sat down there, and we went through these exercises, the whole group of people there, all, bearing their heart, opening their hearts out to, and crying and holding hands and all this. And I was in there, and I still feel now, I'm still sweating as I'm talking to you. Like my hands are, my palms are sort of when I'm talking to you guys here. And in the end, I understood that I had to ask for forgiveness. Not only forgive them, but also they had to forgive me in some way. Even though they were not present, I had to ask for their forgiveness, because there were things that I could have done, I didn't do. And so that was an awakening moment for me as well, thinking that I hadn't been hard done by. There were things that I could have done. Maybe I was not aware, I didn't have the tools, but there were things that were just let go, and I was dormant, sleeping. And then when I started saying, okay, please forgive me for not having done this, or please forgive me for not accepting this, or your difficulty, or your lack of tools or awareness, because we are all where we are according to where we are, and the tool, and we only work with the tools that we have. And these people, my parents or the people who looked after me, didn't have the tools at the time. So I asked forgiveness for them, but I also asked for forgiveness for myself. So these
Yeah,
are the
I was
moments that
getting there.
really, yeah,
Yeah.
I
built me
wanted to
up.
get there, because I hear you talking about forgiving others and them forgiving you, but it was like, okay, but I'm not hearing something more important from my perspective is we can only shift out of a grudge state towards others if we've started to forgive ourselves in the way that we've showed up, or in the way that we've allowed others to treat us, or in the way that we've given away our power, whatever the context is, Gary. I think my personal journey in terms of growth and the pain and the wounds and the traumas that I've had to go through is I had to realize that I was also a co-creator. And even though sometimes in our younger days we feel powerless and disempowered, we still have choice. And maybe our circumstances, like you spoke, orphanage. I grew up in a home where I was taken care of by people that weren't my immediate family or blood relatives. But if I look back then, all those experiences, once again, it's who I am today. So today I'm actually very thankful and grateful, but I couldn't get there, Gary, or none of us can get there until we realize the role that these people play in our transformation, in elevating us to the next level of our consciousness. Just as dad, for you, Gary, there were all those not so great things, but it's also, I'm very sure your kids will say you're a phenomenal dad because you wanted to be a bit more conscious in how you parent and raise your kids. So I wanted to tap into, when did self-forgiveness start? When did you finally get there? Because we can't go from grudge, not even to grit, until we've dealt with those judgments and forgiveness within ourselves. Only then, if you're giving yourself a bit of forgiveness and grace, do you move forward.
Yeah, forgiving yourself. It's like it's just waking up, I think. It's this understanding that I also understood that I had to break a chain. It was a chain that even my father had succumbed to from his father. So it was a chain reaction, and I had to break that chain. And so when I had these anger moments, and I had some rage inside of me, and the only people who understood my rage, were the people closest to me. So people outside didn't see this rage, and that was the really sad part about it as well. It was shown to the people who loved me the most, my wife or even my kids. I tried to hide that, and especially from the kids, because I didn't want to be the same as my father. So I hid that from them, but my wife actually felt the full force of that until things really got to a point where everything was just going to explode, and I was going to be left with nothing. That I actually took the situation into hand and started working on myself and trying to understand what is anger management, what is rage control, and all that. So a lot of forgiveness. I forgive me now. Self-forgiveness. I understood that I didn't have the means, I didn't have the tools to understand all of this. And a lot of people like that. I mean, I think my father too, and his father too, and all the people that were around him, they didn't have all of this that we have today. We're very fortunate, very grateful to understand myself better. And so now I'm living a life where it's a lot of self-awareness in the way I am with people, the way I talk to people, the way I accept people, the way I give attention, I give my time, or I don't. There's much more presence, let's say, in what I do.
I want to acknowledge you, Gary. It's not easy for any of us, whether you're male or female, to where we admit our imperfectly perfect selves, our flaws, and our role that we play in it, and to do so on a public, platform like this, which is streamed across 3 different places. and who lives there. It takes courage, and it takes a rare level of authenticity to show up in the way that you do. So I just really want to say thank you for honoring us with your story and coming here and almost setting the bar high for others, but doing so in a very subtle, human way for others to say, you're being a torchbearer. So I want to acknowledge that part. And the other part is not most men feels it's taboo to even take on this journey of self-awareness. And yet you sit here in front of us, and your mission of helping entrepreneurs, which is not only helping entrepreneurs, but you're helping that generation that you're referring to. You had to break the generational cycle for yourself, but now you're paying it forward and doing that for multiple other people. I don't care if you're calling them entrepreneurs, they're still human beings, and you breaking those cycles within those homes. So thank you.
No. I wanted, when you invited me to the podcast, I wanted to be as authentic as possible. I think that was the message I sent to you. I didn't want to show up pre-created or conceived ideas and then just repeat things I've read in books and what I've heard on in different conferences. I wanted to just speak to you from the heart. And some people will like it, listen to it. Some people will not. But I think that's everyone has their own prerogative. They can decide for themselves what they want, where they are.
It's the way we run our podcast, as Jamila will probably attest to it. We do not have rehearsals. There are questions, and you probably might see one that's popped up on the screen. We haven't even got to the question because we will go with the flow of where you are and what you're bringing to us and the audience. And the audience that are here are meant to be here. I just want to acknowledge Letitia on Instagram and everyone else that might be there. And then we have somebody from Portugal, Adele Franco. Is this someone you might know as well, Gary?
No.
In your network?
No. Personally.
Thank you for representing Portugal as well. So it's lovely to have you here. So Jamila, I'm going to again hand the baton to you. Is there anything you'd like to pose back to Gary?
I just want to address what you've said, Gary, about coming across as just being authentically yourself. And that's exactly what Anissa and I try to strive for on this podcast. But also just to add on, the humility that you show is wonderful. And, with everything going on and people becoming more conscious and more aware, there's a lot of, words that are trending and stuff like that. So I really resonate with what you said about just not regurgitating stuff from books and whatnot, but sharing your authentic story with us. And that's exactly what we are here to learn about, because by sharing our stories, we realize that it's bigger than us. It's so much bigger than us because it's about everyone else. And I'm sure that you've touched a lot of different lives since sharing some of your story and paying it forward and all the rest of that, which is absolutely incredible, because for me, that sounds like, you found your purpose, and you sharing it forward now is you offering your servitude, which there is no purpose without serving, right? So could you please just elaborate a little bit more about what you do with young entrepreneurs and how you help them from your experience and your journey?
Yeah, I think I do a few things. Yes, I do work with young entrepreneurs or young people, human beings, as Anissa said. Let's not call them entrepreneurs because they're not entrepreneurs yet. I started off about 4 years ago asking myself, and how could I pay it forward? Because I'd felt this gratitude inside of me because everything was going so well. The business was going well, my family, my health, been married for 25 years, all things that I was just taking for granted. But it was just, I became grateful for all of this. And I said, right, okay, I'm going to pay this forward. What can I do? So I remember just sitting in my office and just connecting voluntary associations, asking, how can I help? What can I do? Can I be an entrepreneur for immigrants coming to Italy who don't speak the language? Can I don't know. I looked in animal shelters. I looked at everything. And then I ended up in a homeless shelter where I met this was run by these Franciscan monks, who one of them has become one of my really good friends. And I volunteered there. I said, I'm here, I'll go there and I'll do whatever needs to be done, from cleaning the toilets, serving people, serving the tables, giving advice, information. I'll do whatever. Every Friday I go there and I do that. 8:30 to 12:30, 4 hours, I go and do that. And that wasn't enough. So I said, let's do something. I got to do some more. I felt there's like, when you have this, there's an energy inside of you, or there's a need to give it out. And I said, I can do more. What more can you? This is while running my business, and the family, and my personal interest, tennis, mountaining, and so on. And I said, okay, let's sign up with various associations. See if there are associations that would need an executive coach. So I did that. I went to different places and I actually signed up, and I said I will volunteer my 25 years of expertise and my time, energy, anything, that's what I do. And I started receiving so many requests in Italian, because I speak Italian, and every so often someone in English, but in Italian mainly, helping these young people who've got ideas that they want to develop. And that gave me such satisfaction, because when I first started my business 25 years ago, I didn't have anyone around me. There was no mentors. There was no coaches 25 years ago. It just didn't exist at that time. And I had to go through trial and error. Try this, wrong, go back, do that. And so I've got a lot of experience of running from a startup to bringing a company to like a mid-sized company, going through difficulties, recruiting, and so on. So that's what I do. And I get people online who come along, and I stay with them for about a month, 6 weeks. And we have calls, and we go through their idea and trying to bring that to reality. Some work, some don't. And if you look at my LinkedIn page, there's so many different reviews that I've received because of that. And then I thought, okay, I can do more. I can do more. What more can you do? And so I set up this Be Well. The Be Well webinar was business entrepreneurial well-being. And I said, I can do that online, and I can connect with people all around the world. Wow, let's do that. So again, scared, absolutely scared, thinking, what the hell am I doing, and who's going to come, and whatever. It's been going for over a year. And on my YouTube channel, I have like 50, 60 videos of each session that's recorded and put on the YouTube channel. And again, people are coming, being guest speakers like Anissa did. We have participants who come along, people who take some value from these hours together. And I'm excited. I think, wow, there's so much that more I can do. And I feel like I'm on top of my game. So I'm doing all of this, and this is my way of paying it forward. This is understanding what there's so much we can do to help others rise and walk together. So that's what I do.
I love that. I love it. I think that it's certainly something that I have just learned is to say, go and move forward. I love the idea of phoning these institutions, because we always feel we have this burning desire to do more, but we don't act upon it. And so you've given some nice ideas to act upon it. And I always say that 80-20%, like 20% of my work I should be doing at least pay it forward. I'm being mindful. I'm a single mom. I can't give away all my time. But I do feel that the more you give, the more you receive. So I want to ask you, who are your allies? And I know you said you didn't have mentors at the time, but surely there must have been someone, a mentor or an ally on your side to help get you to the success that you have today. Or did you truly just do this completely by yourself? And then tell me, what are those strategies that got you there? Because I'm an entrepreneur and I might be needing you to mentor me too.
I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to have something inside of you it's an inner drive, because I can't explain that. I didn't go to university. I didn't have the opportunities. I got a degree degree later on in life, when I didn't want to be inferior to anyone else, and I went and studied online. I did it on an open university degree.
Yes.
But it was inside, from a very young age. I remember, coming to the UK when I was about 10. I was brought to the UK at 10, 11. I was like already delivering newspapers, and I was already working the milk round and working in shops to make some money. And in the summer, working on farms. And so I had this inside of me, this desire to be financially independent of my parents, who couldn't help me anyway. But I had to have my own independence, financial independence at the time. So from the age of 11 to 15, 16, that's what I was doing. So there was an inner drive anyway. There was an inner drive, okay, to work for myself, to be in command. Yeah, let's see where you can go, how far you can go. Be sure of yourself. And if you're at level 1, can you get to level 2? What do you need to get to level 2? There was always continual entrepreneurship, let's call it. There's, in some of the poor countries, people seem to have this inside of them. It's inbred. You go to these poor countries, and everyone's an entrepreneur. And I think, wow, there's entrepreneurs. I just came back from Tanzania, and there were so many people selling nothing. Nothing, absolutely nothing. I was like, what? And they would say, would you like to buy this? I said, but buy what? And there's like a little thing, they will sell it to you for $5. I think that is incredible entrepreneurship, really. I mean, you're selling me nothing, but you want money for that. And I think that's what I had inside of me. I'd like to think, whether it was my time that I'd spent in India, in this orphanage, and in all the environment that I had in the first 10 years of my life, I'd like to think that that's what it is. A person who I admire greatly is my father-in-law, an Italian man, businessman. He, maybe inadvertently, I don't know, because we didn't speak the language at the time. He's Italian, I'm English, and we, the first few years, we didn't communicate. It was very sort of I'm you, that kind of thing. It wasn't very easy, but he's a remarkable man. He started himself from a self-made man, made his own company, ran a company of 600 people, had branches all over Italy, the financial markets, and so on. He's now nearly 80 years old, and actually we're looking after him in this period now, me and my wife. But he's a person who I can really look up to, because I think he's very humble. He's got all the characteristics that I'd like to say I have, or would like to have, because he started the company from nothing, made his fortune, shared his fortune, and he's a self-made man. So I think that's a role model that I'd like to say helped me unconsciously.
Sure.
Gary, Anissa, we all parents here, and I'm listening to your story of when you were young and how you had to try and start making money for yourself. And what happens is that when we come from hard beginnings or difficult beginnings, and where this is your mindset, I know I often used to think that when I make it, when I'm successful in my life, I'll make sure that my son or my daughter has this and that. And that's a very dangerous trap that we can fall into as parents, because it's so important for us to teach our children the value of hard work, the value of money, and to be able to respect it. What has your upbringing, how has that upbringing and that mindset impacted on who you are today and the parent that you are? And what are some of the values that you instill on your kids to make sure that they're growing up having that value for money and the work ethic that comes with it?
Good question. A really good question, Jamila, because for me, being a father is very, very important. It gave me stability in life. It gave me focus on something that wasn't me. Whereas before I was just in a survival mode because I had to survive. And I was quite proud to say I was a survivor. I had to suddenly say, no, put yourself. And so I focused on the children. My upbringing, and that was the reason of the free to fly sharing, is something that cannot be repeated. I don't think I'm not that kind of father who says, oh, when I was young, this is what happened. And look at you guys, because it just can't be repeated. And I don't want it to be repeated either. I've taken some really good points from the strength, my confidence, ability to actually work on my own. But I think the most important thing I get across to my children, my 3 children, if they watch this video, they'll know this. This is exactly what I say, is the respect. Is respect for yourselves. And being able to also, and I like to say this thing, being able to walk with princes and paupers. This is something I share with them. So it's the ability to be with someone who has money, a prince, but also to be with a person who's a pauper, who's very poor, and still be yourself. So there's no need for you to go up and down, whatever. Just be yourself wherever you find yourself. And I think that's the message that I've come from very poor background. So I can say I've seen poverty. And so when I see poverty now, I'm not shocked by it. I see in the homeless shelter with refugees, or in Tanzania or around the world, the travel. I'm not shocked by it because I can embrace it. It's just part of us. It was part of me once. I see rich people. I've come across a lot of rich people, with their Ferraris and big villas and so on. And I acknowledge that too. And I say, well, I'm happy for you. A lovely car you've got, but that's it. So it's being able to be in between those worlds and still not be out of place. I think that's the message I give my kids.
I like that, Gary. I mean, I can resonate also with you when you say you started working young. My sales career, I think, started at 8, 9, doing door-to-door selling. So I can relate, because also coming from that impoverished environment or suburbs, it wasn't even a suburb, just an area. And it's very difficult because Jamila, that question was such a profound question, because I recently had to have the chat with my oldest son, who's going to be 18 in a few months. And I can see he's not able to understand, one, how to value money, respect money, and start to become more self-sufficient. I mean, I lived on my own since 15, 16. If I look at my kids now, I don't know whether I said to him, I'm not sure that you're going to be okay. I want to know that you're going to be okay, because if I become incapacitated as a single mom and primary provider, what happens to you guys? If I pass on, I need to know that you have exactly that understanding of the impermanence, that you can have it all one day and you can have nothing the next day, because we're all only one paycheck away, as our other lady Peggy says, from being potentially unsheltered, homeless. So you have to honor and respect everyone on your path and in your journey as if that could have been you. And that for me is the biggest value. Also, I can resonate, Gary, where I tell my kids, you are not above anyone, you're neither below them, you're walking alongside one another on this journey called life, on this earthly realm. Yeah. So we have no right in any shape or form to treat any person differently. But then again, they also have their own journeys, our kids. And we can try and instill these value systems, but they have their own personalities. And we need to be mindful of that as well. I wanted to share.
No, absolutely. And I think that as parents, it's very important for us not to overcompensate, because in that overcompensating and reflecting on what we may not have had when we were younger, we try to do this so that they don't have any of the difficulties such that and then what it's a very narrow path, because you know, the kids can then tend to be or to have this attitude of entitlement. And I bring it up because it's so common in South Africa today. Anissa, you know this. There's a lot of people who have, you know, a a lot of entrepreneurs who have suddenly have come into money and come from really difficult backgrounds. And now they have the means and the access to give their children everything that they kind of looked in awe of when they were growing up. And I don't think people realize the importance of making this known, of allowing your children to struggle a little bit so that they can understand what the value of hard work is. And to your point, most importantly, is not to let that money or that success or that wealth define who you are as a person, or anyone else for that matter.
Yep. Gary, I wanna just delve into a bit of some of your powerful lessons that you've gained on a few areas. So sort of the cultural adaptation. What have you learned in that context? And then also how that contributed to you, not only on a professional level, as a human being, as a person, just you being Gary. How did this help you?
Well, definitely. When I first came to Italy, I didn't speak the language, and when I opened my business as well, I had some real difficulties because I was trying to sell your services, not speaking the local language, which wasn't very easy at all. You can imagine trying to sell something. And so I remember one of the appointments that I went to, and it still it makes me laugh now, but at the time was like really quite scary. I went to this. I was given an appointment in a big company. I just opened a language school and had this appointment on the Monday. And over the weekend, I said to my girlfriend at the time, because we weren't married, and I said, can you just help me just do some role playing Italian? Because on Monday, I've got this massive appointment and I really want to close it. And she said, yeah, okay. But she didn't have the patience. You know what women are like. And so after a while, I said, just ask me some questions, and she would ask me some questions. Then I would say in broken Italian, in English, whatever. And it was a complete disaster. The preparation just wasn't enough. On the Monday, went for the appointment, and the appointment was a disaster completely. The guy who was supposed to make decisions didn't understand what I was trying to do. I didn't understand anything. I came away with my tail between my legs, and I said, no, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. And so that was a big realization that if you live in a foreign country, you got to speak the language. So I went and I enrolled straight away on a course, and I studied Italian, and I became adept at speaking in Italian because I went for the whole year, working in school in the morning and working in the afternoon. So that was a big realization. If you're going to be in a foreign country, you better know the language.
Yeah.
Cultural wise, I mean, Italy is quite a complex country, from the food, from the fashion, from the community, because it's very still old style, big families. And I was used to quite running on my own. I was like a lone wolf. And so when I met my wife and they had this big enormous family, I just suddenly felt overwhelmed by all of these people. I just thought, I can't do this. I said, I want my own space, my own unit. And so I had to really fight for that, to understand how I could be with the expanded family, but also with my family. So my family had to have my values, the way I saw life, the way my background and so on, but also be part of a big extended family. They were things that I found very difficult at the beginning, living in Italy.
Wow. Jamila, anything you want to ask around that cultural adaptations?
Just a comment. For me, it was the complete opposite, because and from our experience here is that we have these huge families that we already grow up in, and also that extends to the community. I come from a very small little town, coastal town, and growing up, everybody took accountability for everybody else and their children. So it was wonderful to experience. It was wonderful because it kept a lot of people a lot of youngsters out of trouble. But it also felt really lovely and safe. And I tend to reminisce about this a lot nowadays, because after my divorce and moving to Johannesburg, it's just become my son and myself, which is kind of the opposite experience of what you've had. And I guess both have their advantages and their disadvantages. But for me, I think it's just all growing parts and patterns. And what is your experience now of being in this huge family, and how do you feel about it compared to when you had first just gotten into it?
In a strange, when I got married, I was like, even that was not planned. It was just something. Just I don't know what happens. Sometimes this life happens when you're making plans to do other things. Like, I just got married to this Italian girl, married, and again, I think unconsciously I was looking for stability. I'd been traveling around the world. I'd come to Italy with a backpack. I'd been in the wilderness, let's call it. I call it the wilderness years, because I didn't really know what I was doing, where I was going, and where this was all going to finish. I didn't have any idea. I was going to hit rock bottom, and then I was going to come back up again. And maybe I did. Wow. And so when I got married, beautiful day. I had a brilliant day. I remember I even said that to my wife, that day was such a special day. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to get married that day, but I didn't realize what marriage meant. So like about 3 or 4 days later, I just realized what I'd done. And I said to my wife, I think I made a mistake. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I don't think I can do this. And I said to her, I said, I don't think I can do this. I said, because I had a great day. We had a great party and everything like that. But now this is becoming like really serious. I've got to really commit to this. And she said, well, you've been running away for your whole life, Gary. You've been running away from everyone, from everything. It's about time you matured. And I thought, oh my God, it was like really wake up calls. And so for me, the family was my stability. I was unconsciously looking for this. This is what I needed. And when the first child came along, my daughter, Abigail, when she came along, that was it. That just gave me my foundations. And I started from there. And I said, now you're not one of these wanderers, going around. You've got to stop. And so that's what happened. So that was my that was my introduction into marriage, let's say.
So we have, I think we have 10 minutes remaining for our podcast. I can't believe every time we're just getting into the gist of it. But I want to ask you, Gary, family life, work life, business, friendships, just all of it. How do you now integrate all of the parts of yourself? And have you actually, as I said earlier on the talk that I did, are you embracing when the inner villain part of you maybe does rear its head every now and then? Because we still have a shadow side to us all. And that's always going to be part of us. How do you balance that aspect when those triggers do show up? Because we can't also be perfect all the time and expect things to be happy all the time. Any tips or suggestions? But I want you to, like you did earlier on, get real and raw. Tell us about some of those moments.
Get real and raw. Yeah. The inner villain was the dark side of me, the one that could go from 0 to 100 in that was it. Yeah. I would just take off, and there was like you're lighting a piece of paper and you couldn't stop it. I didn't know myself. I was just out of my own self. It was like some demon had just possessed me and would take me to another place where I was capable of doing anything, and I wouldn't even know I'd done it. And then I'd come back down tired and asking for forgiveness, and just saying, well, what's the big deal? But by then I just burnt all the ground around me. So that was the kind of stuff I was really into. I mean, but that was, and my poor wife at the time just couldn't understand it because she came from a different background. She just didn't understand what was a problem here. But it was like, you know, it was reaction rather than responding. It was like reacting to things that probably happened to me when I was 3, 4, 5, 10. I don't know. All that was all put into that one moment, and boom, it's gone. And so I was like a walking dynamite, you know, like or a grenade waiting to explode. And it was very, and it was very tiring. It was also exhausting, really, because sometimes I'd come away with that so tired. I would like to think I've got that under control now.
Okay.
I have it inside of me. I'd like to say that it's not aggression anymore. It's more being assertive. I know what I want. I'm less tolerant than I used to be, because now I stop things in the bud before things blossom and then say, oh, it's too late. So I stop it straight away, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a working agreement, whether it's an invitation to somewhere I don't want to go. I will make things clearer, even with my wife. Whereas before I would just go with the flow and then be in a situation and then think, I don't want to be here, and then explode. That's what used to happen. Now I say to whoever, I say, listen, this is not for me. I'm going to go with whatever happens now rather than actually develops into something bigger later on. So that was an awareness moment for me as well. So, yeah, I think the inner villain is under control now. I have my dark side, but that dark side is more in control, because I know it's there. I can use it as I need to be assertive, to put down those boundary lines, and you're not going to cross that. No, we're not going to do that. So I'm much more aware about that. I'd like to think that that's how my inner villain is playing its part.
It's either feeding the bad wolf or the good wolf. So you're not giving the bad wolves that much attention anymore, which I like what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Jamila?
I think, Anissa, also, you know, we're so focused on putting boundaries out there for people not to take advantage, but it's so important for us to bring that within and place boundaries for ourselves on what we can be tolerant of, on what we will accept or not accept, on not allowing something to go beyond a certain point. So that's so important for us. But I also just want you to just go back a little bit to, you know, you mentioning about the marriage, and then about a few days later and saying that you don't know whether this is for you or not. Do you think that was just your form of protection, to self-protect, and that finally came to a point where you then realized that you were in a safe space and it was okay for you to let down all the guards that you had around you, all of the, you know, the bars that we put up around ourselves, because you had finally got to this place with this amazing woman, and you had that wedding day for a reason, because I think you might have felt that. Is it then that you felt for the first time, or I don't know, maybe this just was subconsciously, then you realize that it was safe for you to be in this space. It was safe for you to expect happiness for yourself. It was safe for you to be loved and to love.
Yeah. I think that happened when my first child was born. I think that's, I felt like there was something that had to be done by Gary that was bigger than just himself or getting married or running away, because I'd always run away, because if I couldn't handle the situation, relationship, I just leave. I just get up and go. There's no big deal, whether it was a girlfriend relationship or it was a job, whatever. I just get up and go. And then when I couldn't do that, when that first child arrived, I couldn't just get up and go, and didn't know what a father had to do. I remember even the nursery rhymes or the child stories didn't have any idea, so I'd sing them. I learned Hotel California. I put it to sleep on singing Hotel California or something like that because I didn't know any of the nursery rhymes or whatever. So I had this special relationship with her, with this daughter of mine. And I gave her I gave everything, all my love went into her, and I just extracted as much as I could from her because it was that innocent love. It was just like unconditional. There was nothing in it, there was nothing in between it. And I think that's where I really started actually understanding that I'd found my place.
That's absolutely incredible and so admirable. And I say this because I want you to acknowledge and to hold this to your heart, Gary, is that not every father does that. Not every father has that realization of that unconditional love and the place that they hold, or the special place that they hold in their child's life. And I'll say this to you because of personal experience. So when I hear you say this and acknowledge this, it's not to be taken lightly. It's not to be taken for granted. It's not something that just automatically happens in anyone's life. And I'm not going to, just keep this to a father. I can extend this to moms as well. But just a shout out to you, that you stood up, you took responsibility, and you played your part as a father, as a husband, I'm sure. And also now to all the people that you are helping and paying it forward to. So I do acknowledge you for that.
Yeah, I want to echo that sentiment.
What we were saying before about it's, I think Anissa said before, we can't tell people how to live or what to do. We can't do that. But what we can do is embody what we say, how we are, and hope that other people around who cross our paths see this, whether it's unconditional love, whether it's acceptance, whether it's whatever it is, it's emotional regulation, all the things that I didn't have under control, didn't have absolutely. Mm-hmm. So if someone sees me now and they see something in me, whether it is, they say, "Oh, how's that guy able to manage this situation so calmly?" I hope they take something like that away and say, well, maybe the next time I'll try and be like that guy I saw back there in that traffic jam and be calm. Okay. So I think that's all we have to do is to pay it forward is to be it.
Yeah. Gary, I must tell you that I echo Jamila's sentiment because I have a lot of conversations with my kids in terms of what their dad can or cannot extend to them. And he cannot extend it to them because he doesn't know how to extend it for himself. So I think you've just got an awareness and a consciousness and a willingness, I would say, to want to be accepting of where you need to grow, learn, and evolve. And also, let's not forget unlearn. Because the reason why your bad wolf isn't as loud as it is, you had to unlearn that way of being and become a new integrated person. And I always say the villain is never going to leave us. It's another way is our saboteurs and how we sabotage ourselves or our relationships. But it's how we just are willing to unlearn some of those patterns, that deep-rooted conditioning and beliefs that are attached to these old constructs of our lives. And we were chatting at this event last night, one of the moms, and she said she was getting agitated with her kid because her kid is so assertive and so spirited. And she had to realize, but this is her kid's essence. And so the way we show up can also impact our children's essence because of our unhealed traumas or wounds. But when the awareness comes there, I talk to my kids often to say, do not be in judgment if somebody is not giving or you're not on the receiving end of what you would have expected from that person. They're only giving from their lens. So from my side, I want to acknowledge you again and thank you. This has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. And I'm grateful that you graced us with your presence, with your authenticity, and you were willing to be as open as you are. And it's commendable that the work that you're doing. And I look forward to more conversations in the future with you.
Well, thank you, Jamila. Thank you, Anissa, for the invitation. It was nice talking to you. I just wanted to be as authentic or open as possible, really, because this is exactly how I think conversation should be. If the other side is willing to listen to the conversation, because that's also very important. It's a two-way dialogue.
Yes. Yeah, no, we thank you again, Gary, for just showing up as who you are. And that's what this podcast is all about. We're just here as human beings sharing our experiences and learning from each other. And what you've brought across so brightly is your humility. And I love that about today's talk over and above everything else. You've accomplished so much. You've gone through so much in your life. And you're here at a point where you are again saying, what more can I do? And what more can I do? And with the utmost humility. So it has been an absolute pleasure spending this hour with you. And we're very grateful. Thank you, Anissa, for getting Gary to be on the podcast with us and for sharing his insights. And like you said, we hope that you will join us again soon.
Oh, thank you. And hopefully I'll see you guys on the Be Well, and the Be Well series sometime. Because again, that's another way of me paying forward the good fortune that I've had in this life.
Looking forward to being there again with you, Gary. Any last closing wisdom that you want to leave the audience with? I know we're over time, but you've given so many nuggets.
I know we've gone over time. I think the last point that you made, and there's so much we could have talked about, but I think the unlearning is just as important as the learning. I think what you mentioned before is, what we were brought up to believe is not always the way it is. And so also going through a stage where you have to unlearn or put to one side some of the stuff that you were brought up with, and understand that doesn't resonate with the way you are today. And so change the narrative, change the conversation, and bring a new belief to the way you are. And I think a lot of that has been also a work that I've done on myself, is unlearning and just saying that's not me. That was the way I was. That's what I had around me, and I think that's also important. So yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the great conversation.
So much so, I'm going to end the live, but Gary, we normally do a 1 to 2 minute debrief after our session, so do stay on. Thank you for those that joined us on Instagram, for those that were here on LinkedIn. Unfortunately, not all the comments come through, and I wanted to stay engaged, so we will look at your comments afterwards. Jamila has placed Be Well Hub series if you want to get in touch with Gary, and the Free to Fly autobiography. And I'm sure that Gary will also respond on the post if there's anything more he'd like to add and how you can reach him. So on that note, thank you. And until next week, we'll see you again.